I guess you just have to be prepared to die.
I think this whole issue of safe sex is indeed a myth.
At your 20-year reunion from high school, there are going to be empty chairs because they will have died of AIDS.
You deserve this. You deserve to see this because I had to see it. Hey y'all, welcome back. I'm Mama Dr. Jones, a board-certified OBGYN and mom to four, and today we're going through some vintage HIV AIDS education that was apparently shown in schools. These two videos, I don't know if I should laugh or cry. This first one, it's a ride. Let's jump into it.
What does the term AIDS stand for? Yeah?
Acquired immune deficiency syndrome.
Acquired immune deficiency syndrome, right.
Off to a decent start, I must say.
If we were to go down and acquire an automobile, would it all of a sudden just boop?
I don't know what's scarier, what you're about to hear in this video or those bangs. I lived through the late 80s and early 90s, and there are probably photos of me with terrible bangs, but I don't care what the style was then.
Welcome. You've got mail.
That should be illegal. YouTube should take this video down purely based on those bangs. We need to ask the 90s for our money back.
Well, the AIDS virus is the same way. It's not going to all of a sudden just boom, be in your bloodstream. You have to do something in order to get that virus.
I love her sound effects. Boop, boop, boom,
Boom. How do you get the AIDS virus or HIV into your body?
You get it when you have sex with another person that has it.
Okay, right. Your chance of getting the virus increases with each successive partner that you have. However, you can get it the first time that you ever have sex with anybody if that person is infected with the virus.
This is technically true. The relationship with multiple partners is really related to high-risk sex behaviors. So if you're having sex with more people, then you're more likely to be having sex with people before, getting tested, making sure that everybody is safe, and having the conversations that need to be had around this.
This one is really controversial. You're not going to like it at all. What?
Kissing someone that has it.
Okay, so would you say deep French kissing?
Yeah.
I mean, where you really go for it.
Yeah.
Okay, that kind of kissing can put you at risk for this virus because the virus has been...
I agree with that guy's face.
Virus has been cultured from the saliva of people with AIDS, especially toward the end stages of the disease.
Maybe if somebody had bleeding gums, both partners had bleeding gums or mouth ulcers or something like that, there would maybe be a very small chance of transmission, but that is highly unlikely. I don't even know if that's ever been described, and if it has, it's incredibly rare. So in general, no, HIV is not transmitted through kissing.
At my 20-year reunion from high school, there were probably some people there with genital herpes or other venereal diseases that were incurable, but they were there. At your 20-year reunion from high school, there are going to be empty chairs because they will have died of AIDS.
What? I know most of you are familiar with the moral panic and fear-mongering that went around in the 80s and 90s regarding HIV and AIDS, but this is just an example. This is a symptom of that problem, and this has perpetuated long past the 80s and 90s because of the stigma associated with it, perpetuated largely by things like this. People were afraid to get tested, afraid to seek treatment. They wouldn't want to be seen around clinics that did HIV testing and treatment, and you couldn't talk to your partner about it. So things like this actually made this worse because it felt so taboo that nobody could even mention it or seek treatment or help if they were suspicious that they might have it. And it perpetuates into now.
Condoms, do you think that's a good way to go? No?
I sit here, I think this whole issue of safe sex is indeed a myth.
It could slip off or break.
Okay. Think of it in terms of Russian roulette. What is it, 1 in 6 that you're going to die?
I don't even think I can show the imagery in that because it will get this video taken down.
When you use a condom, it's like you're playing Russian roulette. There is less chance that when you pull the trigger, you're going to get a bullet in your head. But Who wants to play Russian roulette with a condom?
They basically are showing someone loading a gun with bullets and pointing it into the camera. That is horrific. Condoms are extremely effective at preventing STIs, including HIV.
You're not just going to bed with that person, you're going to bed with every other person that person has ever gone to bed with before in their life. So just picture it's as if you're all crawling into one bed together. You're packing along a loaded revolver with you when you go.
What if I want to have sex before I get married?
Well, I guess you just have to be prepared to die.
I thought that the Mean Girls scene was an exaggeration.
Don't have sex, because you will get pregnant and die.
You just have to be prepared to die. And you'll probably take with you your spouse and one or more of your children.
It just keeps getting worse. Holy... They played this in schools, you guys.
They will only be exempt if they obey what the Bible says about not having sex outside of marriage.
I do think I remember reading that in the Bible. Don't have sex outside of marriage or you will get HIV. But once you're married, the relationship has been blessed and HIV can't transmit it anymore.
I would rather have AIDS and have the relationship that I have with Jesus Christ than not have AIDS and not know Jesus at all.
I was not aware that those two things were mutually exclusive or that those were related in any way. I went to church many Sundays my whole life, and I have never heard that. It was interesting. We're gonna move on to the next one now. Okay, I'll summarize the first minute of this so you don't have to suffer through it. Basically, these are probably about 10-year-old boys. They've had a baseball game, and afterwards, one of their dads has offered to take them in his stellar yellow Volkswagen Beetle for pizza. Wait until you see what happens.
Grim AIDS forecast for Marin.
What's this?
What's AIDS?
It's a disease you never want to get. It's kind of like a game you can't win.
So this is going to set the scene for the entire video. This dad cannot speak without using ridiculously involved analogies.
What did you mean AIDS is like a game you can't win?
Well, it's no game. Let's get that straight. I just meant that it's a disease that there's no known cure for.
Maybe you could have just said that.
You get it, it develops fully, you die.
Why is it so hard to cure?
Well, it attacks your own defenses. It's like when you get a cold. You know, there's no cure for a cold. But it's your own body's defenses, your immune system, that battles the germs and eventually returns you to health.
That might be the only analogy he uses in this entire thing that actually makes whatever he's saying more clear and not more confusing. It's not a death sentence anymore. You still can't cure HIV or AIDS, but it is very, very livable with medications. We need to make this something that it's okay for people to talk about, not just HIV, AIDS, death sentence. I know these are older videos, but those kind of attitudes are what left us where we are now, where we do have a lot of options, but nobody talks about it still.
Think of it as if you were playing baseball against a team of cold viruses.
Here we go.
But little by little, your body's natural defenses fight back and eventually win.
So why can't you win with AIDS too?
Well, because the AIDS virus prevents the body from identifying who the enemy is.
I don't understand. What do you mean?
Well, imagine that your body was a baseball team, and every one of your cells is a different player.
This analogy is very good. We're all following along.
There are special cells in everyone's body that have the job of identifying outsiders and saying,
"Hey, you don't belong here. Get out of here. Hey, you don't belong here. Get out of here."
I still don't understand why the AIDS virus just doesn't get thrown out too. Yeah, I'd never let some other teams flare sit in our dugout.
Well, I'm afraid with the AIDS virus you wouldn't have much choice. And I'm afraid the problem also goes far beyond the dugout. It's as if all your defenses are blindfolded by the AIDS virus.
If these kids weren't afraid of HIV and AIDS before, they certainly will be now. I will have nightmares about those costumes. I'm gonna need you to subscribe for me having to endure that horror. Perusing the comments, it appears that everybody who watched this video only remembers it for the horrifying costumes that the AIDS and other viruses were wearing.
I still don't see why we can't just stop the AIDS virus in the first place.
Well, this virus is a tricky son of a gun. You know, it's like it doesn't play fair.
What do you mean?
Oh, how am I going to explain this?
I can wager a bet, maybe with another crazy analogy.
Imagine your body was a house, surrounded by a fence. The fence would represent your skin. It helps keep things out, but not everything. Our bodies are always under attack, as it were, by a variety of viruses and bacteria. They take advantage of weaknesses, like when we get a cut, in order to enter our body. But that's okay, because for the most part, we can handle it. Within our body, white blood cells are on patrol all the time. If they catch an intruder, a special kind of white cell, called a helper T cell, is able to identify it as a troublemaker.
Now that I think about it, I believe we actually watched this in my immunology class in medical school. It's such a great explanation.
Once the germ is positively identified, the helper T cell calls out yet another kind of white cell, called killer T cells, that are equipped to get rid of the troublemaker.
Who made these costumes? Find that man and jail him. He has committed crimes against humanity.
Whenever you catch a cold, this is what's going on in your body millions of times until you're well again.
Then why doesn't the body get rid of the AIDS virus the same way?
Like I said, it's tricky. The AIDS virus fools the system, the immune system. If the AIDS virus gets into your body, and by the way, it can't do that easily, you have to be careless in order to let it in. But if it does get in...
Careless, like leaving your gate open.
It's subject to identification, just like any other intruder. This is when it pulls its big trick. When it comes in contact with the helper T cell, which is responsible for identifying troublemakers, it immediately invades the T cell and becomes part of it. In other words, what appears to be a part of your defense system is now really the enemy.
He's okay.
By interfering with the role of identifying troublemakers.
He's okay.
Straight to jail. This is illegal.
It now allows all manner of bacteria, virus, and cancerous growth to run amok.
He's okay. Let him go.
Boy, if I ever find out somebody has AIDS, I think I'm going to stay about 10 miles away from them.
I wonder what he meant. You can't get it easily.
Now that we've heard all the bad news about AIDS, it's time to talk about the good news, huh?
There's good news?
Yeah, it's preventable. That's the good news.
How?
Remember that house I was talking about? You know, with the fence around it.
Yeah, it didn't sound like that fence was doing very much good.
Why do we have to go back to the analogies? Why can't you just say, don't have sex? If you do, make sure you use a condom. Make sure you can communicate with your partner so you know if somebody is infected. And don't inject IV drugs. And if you do, don't share needles. We don't need an analogy for this.
The AIDS virus can't get through the gate unless you let it in. You see, it has to find a way directly from an infected person into your blood system. For that to happen, you have to engage in risky behaviors and be careless. That's like unlocking the front gate and inviting the virus in.
So kids, don't unlock your gate. Don't leave the gate open. Don't unlock it. And especially don't unlock it if a super creepy, giant, red AIDS virus is standing outside of it. Leave the gate locked.
What do you mean, risky behaviors?
And being careless.
Can you just give us the plain language explanation, Dave?
In the last few years, it's become clear that there are two major ways of getting AIDS. One is to have sex with someone who's infected with the virus. That doesn't affect you guys.
That doesn't affect you guys. You're clearly not having sex. I mean, I know they're 10 and hopefully they're not, but it's like such a weird way to phrase it.
And the other, which I hope doesn't affect you either, is taking illegal drugs and shooting them, in your arm with a needle.
I like how he's like having sex with someone who has the virus.
Doesn't affect you guys.
And injecting drugs, which I hope doesn't affect you guys.
Which I hope doesn't affect you either.
He's so sure they're not having sex, something the majority of everyone does at some point. But I'm just hopeful that the IV drug use won't get you.
Sex and needles, that's it?
Basically, yeah.
And the other thing, other than sex and needles, is transmission vertically from somebody who's pregnant to the fetus. This is a common way that it's spread, but is incredibly preventable as well. If you can keep someone's viral load really low in pregnancy, the risk of transmission to the neonate is incredibly low. Babies born to people who are HIV positive will also be given antiretroviral treatment, I think for probably around the first 6 months of life, just as a prophylaxis to further reduce the risk of transmission.
AIDS can't be transmitted casually. And if it gets exposed to air, it can't live. So it's highly unlikely
at least good information.
Drinking glass or touching somebody.
I heard that some people got AIDS from getting a blood transfusion.
It has happened, but in that case, they used a clean, good needle, but the blood was bad. But now that they know about that problem, they're developing tests to screen out the bad blood.
That's great information. Actually, most of everything he just said was good information. And the risk of getting HIV from a blood transfusion now is incredibly rare. The tests for HIV and blood transfusion are very, very good. Which brings me to another point in that in many places, men who have sex with men are still prohibited from donating blood. An absolutely homophobic and outdated practice because we know how to adequately screen for HIV, and we also know that HIV is prevalent in many other populations besides just men who have sex with men.
Everybody's innocent when it comes to AIDS. It doesn't make you a bad person for contracting it any more than it makes you a bad person for catching a cold. It's just more serious. It's important to remember that we don't have to be afraid of normal contact with people who carry the virus. After all, they need our help.
I'm glad that they at least have some attempt at information that is both good and aimed at reducing or addressing the moral panic that was happening in that time. Super serious conversation, transition with the pizza, and cue the jingle. At least that one was decent information, although obviously outdated, probably even for the time that it was originally being shown. I have perused the comments and it appears that this started being shown somewhere around the 90s, like early 90s, but was shown maybe up until even 2010 or later in some schools. So you gotta love that. Maybe time to retire this one. I don't know. Maybe we could just make another one with less analogies or better costumes if we must have the costumes. Just a thought. Thanks for being here today, y'all. I hope that you learned something. If you're new and you'd like to subscribe, we would love to have you. Hit that subscribe button, turn on notifications so you never miss an upload. I'm gonna need you to subscribe for me having to endure that horror. I will have nightmares about those costumes. I'll see you next Monday.